an analysis of 6 years of disease taking people's lives. All I'll say about that is it's sad, but it's the natural course of life. This graph was created by Dr. Genevieve Briand, brilliant economist, statistician, who gave a lecture, and that lecture is on my YouTube channel. Her lecture was taken down from Johns Hopkins website because of what it contained. This graph that Dr. Briand created, I'd say it's a very nice presentation that she created on a very sad subject. Heart disease here has these wiggles throughout each year. This is 6 years of data. It's not 6 full years, but it touches 6 calendar years, January to September 2014 to 2020. Heart disease is the most prevalent cause of death from disease in the U.S. Other diseases are here. And something we'll notice in all the data, and Dr. Briand mentions this in her video, in her lecture, is that there's this wave throughout each year as we go through the seasons, where we see peaks. Peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs. But all this data has something similar to it. It has a little wiggle. And when you zoom in on it, that wiggle stays present, because this blue line here is the total deaths, adding up all these different diseases, is what presents this graph right here that's blue. And one of the things Dr. Briand mentions, again, are the seasons, and then what I like to talk about is the real data. It's got a wiggle to it, because this is real lives. We lose a few more, and then a few less, and then a few more and a few less. Okay, and the data points that make up this line are every week listed down here. And so COVID takes up a time that's about 1/6. So if we divide this graph roughly in half, forgive me, I'm just doing things roughly, and then divide that into thirds, we have our calendar year somewhere in here. And I apologize. If I was being more careful, I would do this in a plotting program and actually highlight the year. What Dr. Briand noticed, and this is one of the reasons why Johns Hopkins took down the video, is that from the real data of total deaths, counting death certificates from diseases, we see a spike here. Okay, there's this goofy line right here. I mentioned this in other videos. This is a no wiggle line, and that means it's manufactured data. If I want to create a line like this, I would create a math function called assign, and then I would add to that sign another sign, and then I would add to that sign another sign. See, I'm messing up my drawing. It's called a sign series, and with that we could actually match this data right here with a pure function, and it would line up precisely. But real life data doesn't work like that. It's got a wiggle. So back to the year 2020, this horrible year when COVID-19, a very contagious disease that jumps from person to person very easily, and it does take lives. It's a very sad thing. But the question is it really taking about 270,000 lives in this box? We can see this peak right here from 2 years prior, 2018. There's a peak that's about 9,000. Why do I say 9,000? Because this slope is going up at about 1,000 every year, 908. according to Dr. Brienne's analysis, which is a brilliant graph, but her analysis, she shows on her lecture how to download this data from the CDC. It's just raw data. Sorry, this is getting in my brain's way. I'm home so I can speak more fluently with less distractions. In 2012, I was hit by a vehicle and dragged. My brain doesn't operate like it used to. When I'm not home, I'm overloaded and my language center slows down. What we should see here, if this number is accurate for COVID actually taking that many lives in the USA in 2020, we should see more spikes in this data. These little spikes here should be much higher. And how many of these spikes should we see? We should see about 29 of them in this little section. 29 spikes. But we don't. We don't. What that means is that this number right here is suspect. It's not the whole picture. So even though COVID is a very serious disease and it's very contagious, it may not be having the impact that we're led to believe by the 2020 extreme liberal Democrat leaders today. And yes, there are people who are medical physicians who are going against their sworn oath to do no harm, and they're supporting this number when the data itself just flat out doesn't support it. I'm sad that those medical doctors, it took a statistician and an economist, a brilliant one at that. Dr. Brienne has multiple degrees from higher education, multiple masters and a PhD, none of which are medical. My background is not medical. It's 26 years of working in a university physics department specializing in lab techniques, data measurements, error propagations. I don't see the support for Governor Polis in Colorado to lock Colorado down. The data doesn't support it. We all die, and this graph exemplifies the fact that we die, and we die at an increasing rate each year, and throughout each year with the seasons, we die more and less as a human population. But in the United States of America, and you can find another video I have posted of somebody else who made a graph of the UK and Wales, and it's a round graph that goes around in circles. It's a different type of approach to the same sort of data, but in the UK and Wales, they see the same thing. We're not seeing the justification for COVID being responsible for as many deaths as they're reporting. We would need to see about 29 more spikes like this in this section if that were the case. See, disease is happening. And this is just looking at deaths from disease. It's not from all the other things that are impacting us during these lockdowns. That's for another video.